Hope everybody's having a lovely, lovely Tuesday morning here. The time for convening has arrived. The Senate will come to order. At this time, I will ask all unauthorized personnel to exit the chamber. I recognize the senator from the 28th. Speak to the journal.
Good morning, Mr. President. Happy 37th legislative day to you. Also want to wish you a happy National Flower Day and a happy National Agricultural Day. It's a big day today. We got a good lineup of pages today. We have Kaylin Upall, Caitlin Williams, Cohen Eccles, who's actually the child of our very own Senator Eccles. We have Alex and Georgia Barwani. We have Day Hughes, Maddox Smith Davids, Marcus Smith, Dorothy Finley, Ali Akbar Mehdi, and Anaya Mehdi, and Hannah Wasti. Y'all give our pages a big round of applause. Look forward to working with y'all today. Mr. President, let you know that on this day in 1980, which is probably about the year you were born, our very own U.S. President Jimmy Carter announced that the United States was boycotting the Summer Olympics in Moscow to protest the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. Also on this day in 1891, a Hatfield married a McCoy that ended a very long feud. Mr. President, the journal has been read and found to be correct.
All right, Senator, thank you so much for that information and the reading of the journal as well. So is there objection to dispensing in the reading of the journal? Chair hears none. The reading of the journal is dispensed with. Is there objection to the confirmation of the journal? Chair hears none. The journal is confirmed. Let me have your attention real quick here, please. We have a report from the Committee on Rules related to a proposed change in Senate rules. Secretary will read report of the committee. Secretary.
Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Rules has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Resolution 334 do pass, respectfully submitted by Senator Brasso, the 28th District Chairman. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Thank you, Secretary. We will take up the SR 334 later this morning, right before we move on to the main rules calendar. But the Secretary's procedural move here, Secretary had to read that, and we'll take it up here before we get to the main rules calendar. So, all senators who have bills and resolutions to introduce, please bring them to the Secretary's desk. First reading and references to Senate bills.
Senate Bill 318 by Senator Setzler of the 37th and others, a bill to be entitled an act relating to minimum salary schedules in elementary and secondary education so as to provide that the minimum salaries of special education teachers who meet certain criteria shall be 110% of the minimum.
Youth.
Senate Bill 319 by Senator Harrell of the 40th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to provide for a comprehensive state civil rights law protecting individuals from discrimination in housing, public accommodations, and employment to amend Article 4 of Chapter 3 of Title 8 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to fair housing.
Judiciary.
Senate Bill 320 by Senator Rett of the 33rd and others, a bill to be entitled an act relating to procedure for sentencing and imposition of punishment so as to. Senate Bill 321 by Senator Harrell of the 40th, a bill to be entitled an act relating to elections and primaries generally so as to provide for challenging the qualifications of a person applying to the register to vote or any person whose name appears on the list of electors, to provide for grounds, to provide for required documentation relating.
Ethics.
Senate Resolution 354 by Senator Robertson of the 29th and others, a resolution creating the Senate Study Committee on the Effects of Cannabis Use and for other purposes.
Yeah. I fixed myself, I'm sorry. I corrected myself.
354 is going to rules. First reading in House references.
House Bill 710 by Representative Chokas of the 151st, a bill to be entitled an act to create a board of elections and
State and local
registration.
government.
House Bill 713 by Representative Keeley of the 16th, a bill to be entitled an act to create a board of elections
State
and
and local
registration.
government.
House Bill 714 by Representative Cameron of the 1st, a bill to be entitled an act to
State
create a
and
new
local
charter.
government.
House Bill 715 by Representative Powell of the 33rd, a bill to be entitled an act relative to the
State and
Board of...
local government.
House Bill 718 by Representative Jackson of the 165th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to authorize
State
the
and local
governing...
government.
House Bill 720 by Representative Green of the 154th, a bill to be entitled an act
State
to
and local
authorize...
government.
House Bill 721 by Representative Anna Lewitz of the 42nd and others, a bill to be entitled an act creating the State Court of Cobb County, particularly by an
State and
act...
local government.
House Bill 723 by Representative Deloach of the 167th and others, a bill to be
State and
entitled an
local
act...
government.
House Bill 724 by Representative Fleming of the 125th and others, a bill to be
State
entitled
and
an
local
act...
government.
House Bill 725 by Representative Williamson of the 112th and others, a bill to be entitled an act creating a Board of Commissioners of
State
Walton
and local
County.
government.
House Bill 726 by Representative Williamson of the 112th and others, a bill to be entitled an act providing for a change
State
in the
and local
compensation.
government.
House Bill 730 by Representative Lott of the 131st and others, a bill to be entitled an
State and
act.
local government.
House Bill 736 by Representative Williams of the 148th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to create a Board of Elections and Registration
State
for
and
Ben
local
Hill
government.
County. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Secretary will read report of standing committees.
Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Education and Youth has had under consideration the following legislation as instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. House Bill 51 do pass by substitute. House Bill 81 do pass. House Bill 306 do pass by substitute. House Bill 538 do pass by substitute. House Bill 338 do pass by substitute. House Bill 318 do pass. House Bill 87 do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted by Senator Dixon of the 45th District Chairman. Senate Committee on Finance has had under consideration the following legislation as instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. House Bill 290 do pass by substitute. House Bill 504 do pass by substitute. House Bill 170 do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted by Senator Huffstetler of the 52nd District Chairman. Senate Committee on Government Oversight has had under consideration the following legislation as instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. House Bill 269 do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted by Senator Harbin of the 16th District Chairman. The Senate Committee on Health and Human Services has had under consideration the following legislation as instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. House Bill 143 do pass by substitute. House Bill 181 do pass by substitute. House Bill 309 do pass. House Bill 497 do pass. Senate Resolution 250 do pass. Respectfully submitted by Senator Watson of the 1st District Chairman. The Senate Committee on Judiciary has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. House Bill 88 do pass by substitute. House Bill 219 do pass. House Bill 375 do pass. House Bill 404 do pass. House Bill 470 do pass by substitute. House Bill 475 do pass. House Bill 500 do pass. House Bill 563 do pass. Respectfully submitted by Senator Strickland of the 17th District Chairman. Senate Committee on SOGA has had under consideration the following legislation as instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Bill 295 do pass. Senate Bill 300 do pass. Senate Bill 305 do pass. Senate Bill 306 do pass. House Bill 468 do pass. House Bill 599 do pass. House Bill 615 do pass. House Bill 675 do pass. House Bill 699 do pass. House Bill 704 do pass. House Bill 705 do pass. House Bill 707 do pass. Respectfully submitted by Senator again of the 47th District Chairman. Senate Committee on Transportation has had in consideration the following legislation as instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. House Resolution 256 do pass by substitute. House Bill 189 do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted Senator Dolezal of the 27th District Chairman. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Second readers.
Senate Resolution 250 by Senator James of the 35th, City of East Point and City of South Fulton take joint action to activate the East Point and South Fulton Hospital Authorities to establish a new hospital urge. House Bill 88 by Representative Gaines of the 120th and others, Coleman Baker Acton Act. House Bill 143 by Representative Mathis of the 149th and others, Community Health Department of. Include continuous glucose monitors as a pharmacy benefit for Medicaid recipients require. House Bill 170 by Representative Carpenter of the 4th and others. Sales and use tax, taxation of certain digital products and services provide. House Bill 181 by Representative Townsend of the 179th and others. Controlled substances, metrodinine and hydrometrodinine are Schedule 1 provide. House Bill 189 by Representative Meeks of the 178th and others, highways, bridges, and ferries allowable variance for weight limitations upon a vehicle or load provide for. House Bill 219 by Representative Hilton of the 48th and others, banking and finance venue for offensive of money laundering provide. House Bill 269 by Representative Blackman of the 146th and others, Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act authorized local workforce development boards to conduct meetings via teleconference. House Bill 290 by Representative Scoggins of the 14th and others, Revenue and Taxation County Tax Commissioner Duties Revised Provisions. House Bill 309 by Representative Cooper of the 45th and others, Health and Financial Stability Requirements for Applicants and Licensees of Personal Care Homes and Assisted Living Communities Revised Provisions. House Bill 375 by Representative Leverett of the 123rd and others, Guardian and Ward, Authority of Conservator in cooperation with Guardian of, or other interested parties to find gross settlement. House Bill 404 by Representative Carpenter of the 4th and others, Safe at Home Act enact. House Bill 470 by Representative Cooper of the 45th and others, Georgia Candor Act enact. House Bill 475 by Representative Smith of the 18th and others, Code Revision Commission, revise, modernize, and correct errors and omissions. House Bill 497 by Representative LaHood of the 175th and others, health use of certified medication aids in penal institutions authorized. House Bill 500 by Representative Silcox of the 53rd and others, crimes and offenses, offense of arson of law enforcement vehicle provide. House Bill 504 by Representative Hatchett of the 155th and others, education and exclude amounts attributable to Level 1 Freeport exemptions for purpose of calculating local 5 mil share. House Bill 563 by Representative Leverett of the 123rd and others, Fair Employment Practices Act of 1978, hearing before an administrative law judge to provide. House Resolution 256 by Representative Perkle of the 169th and others, Sophia Ruth Fisher Interchange, Tift County dedicate. House Bill 51 by Representative Perkle of the 169th and others, Education, local boards of education use vehicles other than school buses for transport of students authorized. House Bill 81 by Representative Corbett of the 174th and others, Education eligibility criteria for certain capital outlay grants for low wealth school systems revised. House Bill 87 by Representative Irwin of the 32nd and others, Non-Traditional Special Schools Act enact. House Bill 306 by Representative Fleming of the 114th and others, Education Energy Cost Savings Measures revised definition. House Bill 318 by Representative Hilton of the 48th and others, Education Reestablishment of Office of Charter School Compliance under State Charter Schools Commission. House Bill 338 by Representative Irwin of the 32nd and others, Student Technology Protection Act enact. House Bill 538 by Representative Ballard of the 147th and others, Georgia Early Literacy Act enact. That completes the order, Mr. President.
It is now time for the morning roll call. Are there any motions to excuse? Senator from the 54th.
Yes, Mr. President, I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 46th for business outside of the Capitol.
Without objection, the senator from the 46th is excused. Senator from the 33rd.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, y'all. I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senators from the 41st, 42nd, 43rd, and 12th for business inside the Capitol.
Without objection, senators from the 41st, 42nd, 43rd, and the 12th are excused. Senator from the 16th.
Yes, sir, Mr. President. If you would, we'd like to excuse the senator from the 30th.
Without objection, the senator from the 30th is excused. Any other motions to excuse? Secretary will call the roll. Senator, signify your presence by voting the yea switch. Secretary will unlock the machine. It is now time for our morning devotion. All senators, please take your seats and cease all audible conversation. I would ask the doorkeepers secure the chamber at this time. I want to recognize the senator from the 53rd for the second time today, as in he's got the chaplain of the day. He's trying to tell us something, ladies and gentlemen. I recognize our good senator from the 53rd for our Pledge of Allegiance and our chaplain of the day. Senator?
Thank you, Mr. President. Let's pledge to the flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now the Georgia flag.
I pledge allegiance to the Georgia flag and to the principles for which it stands, wisdom, justice, moderation, and courage.
So this is 2 days in a row now I've had the pastor of the day, and I told you yesterday that I had known that pastor my entire life. Well, the pastor today I have not known very long. Probably have only spoken to him maybe about 2 hours my entire life. Now, why in the world would I bring somebody up here to be the pastor of the day that I haven't known very long? Well, whether you're up in the top of the gallery today or whether you're in the Senate chamber, there was a great Frenchman who came over to America, wrote this big book called Democracy. And in that book, he said, the people are going to get the government they deserve, and if they don't get involved in it, they don't deserve very much. And this pastor of the day has been involved in government for a long time, nearly 30 years, I believe, as a chaplain to sheriff's officers in the sheriff's department. And we know they go through a lot of difficulties in their role. They need a shoulder to lean on, and that's been his role. He is also the pastor of Memorial Baptist Tabernacle in Walker County. And, he's got his 2 sons with him when I first met him at the Capitol. He's got his 1 son, and his friend is always bringing a young person along to the Capitol because I believe he feels in his heart that they're going to get the government they deserve, and he's encouraging them to get involved in it. So that's why I've invited him to be the pastor of the day today. This is Pastor Tim Owens.
Good morning. Mr. President, Senator Moore, thank you so much for the invitation to be here today. It is an honor to be back. And I want to let you know from our folks back at Memorial Baptist in Rossville, Georgia, they send their greetings and their prayers to you. And I'm privileged to serve the Walker County Sheriff's Department. And we've got the finest sheriff in the state of Georgia and staff, and they send their prayers to each one of you. And I know I just have a few minutes this morning, but I'd like to take just a few minutes to encourage you this morning and thank you for the work that you do. Many people don't realize the sacrifice that you all make, the challenges and the struggles that you deal with. And I want to read a chapter or a little bit of scripture here for you this morning. And the backstory of it is that the Pharisees were coming to Jesus and they were trying to trick him with some information about the law. And so they came to Jesus, and this is in Matthew chapter 22, verse 36. It says, Master, which is the greatest commandment in the law? And Jesus said unto him, Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. This is the first and great commandment. And the second is like unto it, Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. On these 2 commandments hang all the law and the prophets. In this right here, they were trying to trick Jesus by saying, with all the 10 commandments that you've given, and then the Pharisees had come up with over 600 other commandments, they were trying to trick him into saying, what are the greatest commandment? And Jesus surprised them with his statement that the 2 greatest commandments are to love the Lord with all of our heart and to love our neighbor as ourselves. And for all of us today, I want to encourage us to love the Lord with all of our heart, with all of our mind, and with all of our soul. And basically what that means is we're to love God with every fiber of our being. And for many people, that's fairly easy to do. It's the second part that seems to get us in trouble a lot of times. We live in a country that's divided. We live in a time that's more divided than probably many of us have ever seen. But in this passage of Scripture, Jesus tells us that we're to love our neighbors as ourselves. And most of us in here, we love ourselves. We take care of ourselves. And in a deliberative body like the Senate, it's very easy to get divided. It's very easy to argue and fuss. But when we look at each other and realize that not only are we human beings, but every one of us in here, were created in the image of Almighty God. And when we learn to start to love people, I believe it's hard to love God if you don't love your neighbor. It's easy to love your neighbor when you love God. Now, in the day and times that we live in, I'll be honest with you, I get frustrated sometimes because I think I'm just a citizen. What can I do to stop the divide? What can I do? Jesus tells us right here that we can love each other. What I do at the sheriff's department, what I do at the church, being senior pastor at the church, my favorite title at the church is chief servant. And that's what I am with the sheriff's department. But what can I do to help change the country that we live in, to help change the divide in the state that we have? I can love other people. If I love you the way God loves me, if I can love you regardless of what our ideology is, regardless if you're Republican or Democrat, we can still get along. We can have challenges, we can debate, but at the end of the day, when we look at each other, that every single one of us was made and created in the wonderful image of God. My job is to love the people around me. I know as a pastor, what God's called me to do, what God's called you to do, have some similarities. Of course, I know none of you have ever been called names in the press. None of you have ever had anybody lie about you. Nobody's ever said bad things about you. I'm sure that's just pastors that happens to. But we can love people. Matter of fact, the Bible says in Matthew chapter 5, "Ye have heard that it has been said, thou shalt love thy neighbor and hate thine enemy. But I say unto you, love your enemies. Bless them that curse you. Do good to them that hate you. And pray for them which despitefully use you and prosecute you. That ye may be the children of your Father which is in heaven. For he maketh his sun to rise on the evil and on the good, and sendeth rain on the just and the unjust." This morning I want to encourage you to love your neighbor. And here's the way I think it works. When we as individual people begin to love other people like God has loved us, when we love other people like God has not only loved us but challenged us to love each other, if we do it and we encourage others to do it, could you imagine coming here today if I could encourage each one of you to love your neighbor? Then all of a sudden change happens. And then it goes from this body to across the Capitol to the House. It leaves here, it goes to the citizenry. God never intended for us to be divided and hateful, but he said that we're to love each other. I want you all to know this morning that I love you. I pray for you. I've got a directory that I pray for each one of you every week. And I want to let you know that I'm available at any time. If you need somebody to talk to, you need somebody to pray with you, your family's struggling with something, I'm always available. But I want to encourage you, love each other. Let the change happen here and spread everywhere else. May I pray with you? Father, I thank you, Lord, for today. Lord, I thank you, Lord, for this body. Lord, I thank you, Lord, for the important work that they do. And Father, I pray that you will bless them, that you'll bless their families. Lord, I pray that you'll give each one of them godly wisdom to know to do right, regardless of the political cost, Father, to do right. Lord, I pray that you'll give them protection. You'll protect every member of their staff, their family. And Lord, I just ask that you'll watch over them. Lord, help us to learn how to love our neighbors like we should. Lord, help us to debate, but to love like you have loved us. And the difference that will make will go for generations. Lord, I thank you for each one in this building. Thank you so much. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
if we could get the doorkeepers to close the chamber and get all our senators in here and take their seats, I'd greatly appreciate it. If I could get everybody's attention real quick. Please. We got a special guest with us here today, somebody that I know most people who've been here a little while are very familiar with. We have our former president of this body, the Honorable Casey Cagle here with us today. Casey, stand up. Stand up right here. Thank you very much. Thank you. I wanted to have Casey down to have lunch and everything, and it was kind of funny. He got up here, he stood around and looked. He said, "Yep, looks about the same." Yep. I said, "It hadn't changed much, I can promise you. Different faces, same song and dance." But, you know, Casey was always a great mentor to myself as well as a lot of people in this room. He served in this body, I believe, 10 years as a senator, 12 years as a state senator from Hall County, and then served 14 years? 12 as a state senator, as a lieutenant governor as well. And he's somebody that since being elected, he's somebody I've reached out to, called on to ask for advice and things of that nature and guidance. And he's been a great friend, been a great mentor, been a good person to lean on. And I just wanted to have him down today and have lunch with him, but I also wanted him to come back into the body and address everyone here, and also wanted us to show our appreciation for his 24 years of service to this state and to this body as well. So right at this moment, I'd like to yield the floor to my good friend Casey Cagle.
Wow. Well, thank you all very, very much, and obviously to Mr. President, thank you for the invitation. Time for convening having arrived. The Senate will come to order. I've been away for a good while, but some things never change, which is good. But it's great to be with you today. I appreciate the good work that all of you have done this session. I know that we're getting close to the end, and everyone's excited about that. But I'm particularly proud of the Lieutenant Governor, as well as the Governor and the new Speaker, and just in general the good work that you guys have done. I will report to you, however, that there is life after politics, and it's pretty doggone good. Nita and I, we have 8 little grandbabies now. They're all 7 and under, and we have plenty to keep us busy. I built a little river cabin up in Hazel, North Carolina, and we get to make a lot of great memories up there. And this life outside of politics, as I said, has been very, very good, but it's good to be with each of you. I don't have really any words of wisdom, but I would just reflect for a moment as the Lieutenant Governor articulated, 24 years in public life, and that's an awful long time. 12 of those as a state senator, 12 as Lieutenant Governor. But when I came in 1994, this body was controlled by Democrats, and I was a Republican, the first Republican state senator from Hall County, and obviously later the first Republican lieutenant governor in Georgia's history. But I was trained by Democrats back then, and you had to work across the aisle in order to get anything done. And I think that that is what is so beautiful about this august body of the Senate, is that we are the deliberative body, and the body that it takes 4 House members to do the work of 1 state senator, you know, and don't stop reminding them of that. But it's just been a great honor to have served in this body and to be a part of it for as long as I have, and to see the great things that have happened in our great state, the number one state to do business in economically, and so many great accomplishments. And I know that we're in good hands with each of you, and I am proud and thankful for the friendships that I have made in this body. And I encourage you to continue to act justly, walk humbly, and love mercy. Thank you all very, very much.
Secretary asked if Casey wanted to do the honors of adjournment resolution, so all those in favor? No. Y'all come on down here and shake his hand and thank him for his time of service, please. If I could have everybody's attention one more time, we've got our Doctor of the Day today. And got our Doctor of the Day today, and I call on my good senator from Rockdale County to introduce the Doctor of the Day. Senator?
Thank you, Mr. President, colleagues. Today, for Doctor of the Day is Dr. Jessica Walsh O'Sullivan. She's an emergency medical services physician at Emory University. She completed her undergraduate degree at Emory University and worked as an EMT in Atlanta and DeKalb County. She received her master's degree in physiology and biophysics at Georgetown and attended medical school at the University of Central Florida. She completed her emergency medicine residency at Grady Medical Memorial Hospital. Dr. O'Sullivan lives in Conyers, Georgia, with her husband, Jim, on a small horse farm. I introduce to you Dr. Jessica Walsh O'Sullivan.
Good morning. Yes, I'm Jessica O'Sullivan. I'm an ER and EMS physician. I work with Grady EMS, who provides some of those EMTs that you guys are seeing around the Capitol. So everyone has been super welcoming this morning and said hi and thank you. I hope you also say hi to our EMS folks because they're here every day. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. And if you need anything, I'm happy to help.
All right, thank you. Yes, pleasure to meet you. We have a few special guests with us today, and always glad to have especially the young folks here. They're from Flat Rock Middle School here. They're going to be up here in the gallery, and I'll let our senator recognize them right when she's introducing our fine folks behind me here. Secretary, read the caption.
Senate Resolution 48 by Senator C. of the 34th and others, a resolution recognizing and commending the Flat Rock Middle School singers and Liddell Fortune and for other purposes. Whereas it is abundantly fitting and proper that these exemplars of both academic and musical excellence are appropriately honored, now therefore be it resolved by the Senate that the members of this body recognize and commend the Flat Rock Middle School singers and Liddell Fortune for their outstanding track record, consistent superior performances, and their passion for musical performance in the state of Georgia. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Is there objection to the adoption of the resolution? Chair hears none. The resolution is adopted. I'd like to call on my senator from the 34th to introduce our special guest.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. I stand before you with ultimate joy. I have today with me the Flat Rock Singers. They are 7th and 8th grade chorus students under the direction of Liddell Fortune, who is the Fine Arts Department Chair and has been leading the choral department at Flat Rock Middle School since the fall of 2018. Mr. Liddell Fortune is currently in his 21st year of teaching music in the state of Georgia. Mr. Fortune has a bachelor's degree in music education from Georgia Southern University and a master's in music education from Boston University. Mr. Liddell Fortune was named the 2012 Richmond County Teacher of the Year. He has also received the Golden Apple Award for excellence in teaching. In 2021, he received the Going Above and Beyond Award from the Fayette County School System. The 2022-23 school year is the first year that the Flat Rock Singers were invited to perform at the GMEA conference. The Flat Rock Singers are one of just 4 middle school chorus selected to perform at the GMA in-service conference. And this is the first time they have received an invitation to perform at the state level. The students also participate in Georgia All-State Chorus and District 6 Honor Chorus each year. The selection was a great honor and privilege, and the Flat Rock Singers are here today to be recognized and celebrated for their outstanding accomplishments. I will ask that Mr. Warren Smith, who is with the Flat Rock School, please stand. He's up in the gallery with the kids. And his better half, his wife, Tan Smith, is standing with me here on the podium. And I'm going to allow, I'm going to allow Mr. Liddell to say a few words, but I recognize the Smiths because in addition to their being involved in their children's school, they are active parents, a family that believes in education, and a family that is making sure that we continue to follow the kids all the way to getting their degrees in the universities and colleges of their choices. Mr. Liddell?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you all so much for this awesome opportunity. I would ask now that everyone, the choir members are here, so Flat Rock Middle School, will you stand? My awesome parents who are here, also the bus drivers are here. We are here, and we are delighted to be in your midst, in your forefront today. Thank you so much for this honor, students. You are worth every effort. You are worth the success that we have experienced. This is for you. You have been worth every single day, every single moment, and we are here. We are so delighted to have this opportunity, and we will cherish this for the rest of our lives. My heart is overjoyed and filled. I love being an educator. This is the best job ever, and to God be great glory. Thank you so much.
It's good to have Senator from the 44th with our next special guest here. Secretary, read the caption.
Senate Resolution 234 by Senator Davenport of the 44th and others, a resolution recognizing the 79th anniversary of the United Negro College Fund and for other purposes, whereas the UNCF is the nation's largest, oldest, most successful, and comprehensive higher education assistance organization for minorities. And whereas the mission of the UNCF is to enhance the quality of education by providing financial assistance to the deserving students, raising operating funds for member colleges and universities, and increasing access to technology for students and faculty at historically black colleges and universities. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Senate that the members of this body recognize the UNCF for its, on the occasion of its 79th anniversary, and for its outstanding commitment to providing a quality education for minority and low-income students and promoting leaders to strengthening our global community. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Is there objection to the adoption of the resolution? Chair hears none. The resolution is adopted. Recognize the senator from the 44th to speak to the resolution.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Colleagues, I am delighted today to recognize the United Negro College Fund on the 79th anniversary. The College Fund was founded with 27 member colleges April 1944 under the leadership of Dr. Frederick Patterson, Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune, Dr. William Trent, and many others. It is the nation's largest, oldest, most successful, and comprehensive higher education assistance organization for minorities. I have been a volunteer for this organization for many years, and I'm delighted today, just simply delighted, to recognize the United Negro College Fund. And to speak to this, to accept this resolution is Mr. Maurice Jenkins. Many of you know he is a resident of DeKalb County, but he works out of the Washington, D.C. office, and we're delighted that he's in Atlanta today. He is the Executive Vice President and Chief Development Officer for the College Fund, UNCF. Mr. Jenkins.
Thank you very, very much for this resolution. I am so honored to be here to Lieutenant Governor, and they call you the President, but you're Lieutenant Governor for me, and certainly to Gail Davenport, who said many, many years, actually over 40 years, that she's been working with us. I know you didn't want me to say that, Gail, but Gail's been working with the United Negro College Fund here in the metro Clayton County, leading that group there. I'm so excited to be here just to say to you thank you for what you do and what you have done and what you continue to do for 10 historical black colleges in the state of Georgia. And in Atlanta, Georgia, there's the Atlanta University Center, which has more than 10,000 students there and 5 institutions there. So we're so excited for what is happening here in Georgia. Georgia's always been a leader there, and we currently are doing an impact study. But we've done an impact study a number of years ago, and those institutions in Georgia impact Georgia more than $1.6 billion. And so we continue to keep that up to let you know the impact and what we are doing here in the community. So I want to say thank you, thank you, thank you for this. And I am so excited for being here this day because that's all of our future leaders up there and HBCU graduates up there. So I'm so excited. Thank you so very much.
All right, we have our Georgia State University Legislative Health Policy group here today, and Secretary, read the caption.
Senate Resolution 290 by Senator Kirkpatrick of the 32nd and others, a resolution recognizing and commending Georgia State University's Legislative Health Policy Certificate Program and Advanced Health Policy Institute and for other purposes. Whereas the Georgia Health Policy Center at the Andrew Young School of Policy Studies at Georgia State University has developed an educational initiative to inform members of the health community about pressing health-related issues. Whereas the Legislative Health Policy Certificate Program and the Advanced Health Policy Institute at Georgia State University provide elected officials and their staff with the opportunity to make informed decisions on health policy and legislation for the state of Georgia and are worthy of recognition. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Senate that the members of this body recognize and commend Georgia State University's Legislative Health Policy Certificate Program and Advanced Health Policy Institute for providing high-quality education to the leaders of the state. That completes the order, Mr. President.
I recognize a good friend, the senator from the 32nd, to speak to the resolution. Before I do that, is there any objection to the resolution? Chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. Now I recognize the senator from the 32nd.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, the Georgia State University Health Policy Center is an important resource for our state and for the General Assembly, providing research and policy expertise and robust data about the state of health in Georgia. Many of you have participated in their certificate program, including me. There are a number of senators we'll recognize after the podium presentation today. So if you want to join us for a photo on the side, center from the 40th, the 5th, the 29th, the 41st, and the 31st. And the Center for the 43rd has joined us also. I want to present the Health Policy Center with a resolution after we conclude our presentation, but I want to introduce you to a few people that are standing behind me. We'll start over here. Chris Parker, Karen Manyard, Lee Alderman, Sasha Gale, and Torian Percy, and I'm going to ask Mr. Chris Parker to come and make a few remarks.
Thank you, Senator. Good morning, everyone. Mr. President, thank you for the opportunity. I just want to say on behalf of the Georgia Health Policy Center, the Andrew Young School of Policy Studies, and Georgia State University, we are extremely grateful for this recognition. We're also grateful for all of the senators who've participated to this point in the Legislative Health Policy Certificate Program, and would invite your participation on the evidence of your colleagues who've participated to be here. I recognize you're about the people's business, and we're very close to sine die. So with that, I end. Thank you so much.
All right. Good job. Good job. Are there any unanimous consents? Would any senator wish to rise on a point of personal privilege? Senator from the 8th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to share with my colleagues that tomorrow in the Blue Room at the Depot from 4 to 6, the University of Georgia College of Agriculture and Environmental Sciences legislative reception will be taking place. I hope you can join me there. Dean Place has been doing a great job. He came down and spent a few nights at the farm with me and went and met with farmers, and he's really engaged, and I appreciate what he's doing there. You know, today is National Ag Day, and as you all know, I'm pretty passionate about agriculture. And my brother, I've never spoken about him, I guess, in this chamber, but he's 8 years older than I am, and he's really one of my heroes. He during the 80s, when things were so bad on the farm, he had to grow up really fast. And I remember when he was 18 years old, he planted 800 acres with a John Deere 4230 with no heat plate on the bottom of it. And he's going on to be very successful. And the other day we were at his farm, and my son was with him, and they were sitting on the back of the tailgate, and he was kind of dispensing advice. And, you know, I was sitting there in my mind recording it, and I wanted to share with you some of the things he said. He said, "Son, there's a whole lot more money in farming the farmer than there is in farming. Farmers work 7 days a week so that the people we do business with don't have to. Buy land and never sell it. Land is the only form of wealth that lasts, because if you raise your kids on it, they'll get attached to it and won't want to sell it. It's the only good form of materialism in life, because it keeps your children connected to you long after you're gone. Always take good care of the land, and land will take good care of you. Don't get addicted to building ponds, because you'll always be broke. Always buy assets that appreciate and produce income. Equipment isn't an asset because it goes down in value over time. Equipment is just a tool to create income to purchase an asset like land. If you ever get down on life, get a haircut. If a haircut doesn't make you feel better, go buy a new pair of boots. If a new pair of boots doesn't do the trick, go buy yourself a new pickup. And if a new pickup doesn't make you feel better, you might need to see a psychiatrist. You can take an old piece of equipment and paint it up and put a bunch of money in it, but you'll just end up with a pretty piece of junk. Always try to help young people as you get older. Whatever you do, good or bad, to a young person, they'll never forget it. The only way, and I mean the only way, one man can be better than another man is to outwork him. If you ever have to borrow something from someone more than once, you need to own whatever it is you're borrowing yourself. Invest in irrigation, and finally, don't ever get in too deep with a banker. You want to be able to make your own business decisions, and if you're in too deep with a banker, they'll be making your business decisions for you. And our farmers of this state and across the country, they provide the food, fiber, and shelter, but it's the culture of agriculture, I think, that is its greatest contribution. And to our farmers of this state, thank you. God bless you. Mr. President, I yield the well.
All right, Senator, thank you. There's a lot folks could learn from a farmer now. So, a lot of good wisdom. I recognize the Senator from the 9th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, colleagues. This morning, we want to welcome the Georgia Youth Justice Coalition, who is in the Capitol today to talk with us about how we can move towards a future where young Georgians have the freedom to learn and the freedom to be themselves. The Georgia Youth Justice Coalition is a grassroots collective of students who are working to build the power for young Georgians from the classroom to the Capitol. Through training, education, they help their peers to develop the knowledge and the skills to reckon with our past and ultimately shape a better future here in Georgia. My very own Chief of Staff, Melinda, is a graduate of the Coalition of Changemakers Boot Camp, and she is absolutely amazing. And sometimes she's here working even after I have gone home, and I'm so thankful to have her this session. But it's young people like her and these young Georgians who are called to action by the realities of our state, where more children live in poverty than in nearly any other state, and where guns are the leading cause of death for children and teens. Yet, just in the last week, this assembly has voted to target already vulnerable trans youth through SB 140 and open the door to increase racial profiling in our schools through HB 147. We know what keeps us safe. Living in communities where people of color in every background have great schools, accessible health care, and where we address problems with proven solutions like mental health counseling and safe storage for firearms. Today, I hope you will join me in finding time to hear what Georgia's youth have to say and work together towards solutions for our state. Mr. President, I yield the well.
Thank you, Senator. I recognize the Senator from the 49th on a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am here today to welcome some special guests to the chamber. Today is World Down Syndrome Day, and so we have the Down Syndrome Association of Atlanta up in the gallery. And then I also have a special page with me today. My son, Cohen Eccles, was born with Down syndrome, and it is an honor to have him serving as a page in the Senate today. So if you see our folks around in the halls, just be sure to show everyone a warm welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator from the 45th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise today to honor Spectrum
It's an autism support group, and it's their 25th anniversary. They were started back in 1998. And Spectrum serves primarily those in Gwinnett and surrounding metro Atlanta counties. They provide support groups, social skill groups, day camps, and overnight camps. Spectrum was established in the fall of 1998 for families and friends and teachers of children with autism spectrum disorder. It was established by two moms, one being Claire Dees, who founded the group and soon realized that there was an increasing need for support with over 100 people that showed up to the first meeting in the fall of 1998. Spectrum now reaches over 8,000 individuals per year in this state and beyond, and it's growing daily. Spectrum continues to improve the lives of children and adults with autism today, as well as parents, grandparents, siblings, and educators who are impacted by autism. And Spectrum, that group, they are in the auditorium. If you would, please stand and be recognized. If we would, give them a round of applause. Thank you. Mr. President, I yield the well.
Does any other senator wish to rise on a point of personal privilege? Chair hearing none. We're going to go to our special order now. Stand by. I recognize the senator from the 19th. Senator from the 19th.
Hey, thank you, Mr. President. I move that House Bill 611 be withdrawn from the general calendar from the Committee on Rules and be recommitted to the Committee on Appropriations.
The senators move that House Bill 611 be drawn from the general calendar and recommitted to Committee of Appropriations. Secretary, read the caption.
House Bill 611 by Representative Burchett of the 176, a bill to be titled an act to amend Part 1 of Article 4 of Chapter 12 of Title 45 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to management of budgetary and financial affairs so as to provide for the disposition of state funds derived from certain legal judgments or settlements. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Is there objection to the senator from the 19th's motion? Without objection, the motion is granted. You have before you on the Senate consent calendar for privilege resolutions. We skipped over those by accident a second ago, but we have them before you. Is there objection to consent calendar of privilege resolutions? Without objection, privilege resolutions are adopted. Are there any motions to withdraw or recommit? You have before you a consent calendar of local bills. Mr. Secretary, have any objections been filed to any of the bills on the local consent calendar?
Mr. President, no objections have been filed.
Is there objection to the agreeing to the report of the Committee on the State of Local Governmental Operations, which is favorable to the passage of the bill on the local consent calendar? Chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. The questions on the passage of the bills on the local consent calendar. All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed, nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 54, the nays are 0. This bill, having the local consent calendar, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. I recognize the majority leader for a motion.
What's the number? Mine?
Yes, sir. I'd like to make a motion, ask for unanimous consent that the following bills and resolutions be engrossed. That would be House Bill 138, House Bill 408, and House Bill 431.
The senators move that House Bill 138, 408, and 431 be engrossed. Secretary will read the captions.
House Bill 138 by Representative Crowe of the 118th, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Code Section 48540 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated, relating to definitions for property tax exemption so as to update the population bracket and census date for a certain property tax exemption for certain leased property, to provide for related matters, to provide for an effective date, to repeal conflicting laws, and for other purposes. House Bill 408 by Representative Williamson of the 112th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Code Section 4883 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated, relating to exemptions from sales and use tax so as to change the sunset provision for the exemption for competitive projects of regional significance, to provide for related matters, to repeal conflicting laws, and for other purposes. House Bill 431 by Representative Drenner of the 85th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Part 1 of Article 3 of Chapter 8 of Title 48 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated, relating to county special purpose local option sales tax so as to remove provisions relating to the purpose of such tax in counties that also levy and collect an equalized homestead option sales tax, to provide for related matters, to repeal conflicting laws, and for other purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Is there objection? Okay. Well, Senator, come on up. You're waving? Waving, okay. All right, both majority and minority leadership has waived the debate, and the objection is noted, and those in favor of the motion will vote yea. Okay. All right. Senator from 33rd, for what purpose do you rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 34th for business inside the Capitol.
Without objection, the senator from 34th is excused. So now we're at the posture. We had objections noted. Both parties gotten together and waived their debate. And so now it's just a matter of voting on the motion. Those in favor of the motion will vote yea. Those opposed, nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the passage of the motion, the yeas are 31 and the nays are 22, and this motion has prevailed. On to the calendar, we'll begin with the special SR 334. Secretary, read the caption.
Senate Resolution 334 by Senator Kennedy of the 18th. A resolution amending the rules of the Senate and for other purposes. The Senate Committee on Rules recommends that this resolution do pass, respectfully submitted by Senator Brasso, the 28th District Chairman. That completes the order, Mr. President.
I recognize the pro tem to speak to the resolution.
Good morning, colleagues. It still is morning, and thank you, Mr. President, for recognizing me. This resolution, Senate Resolution 334, is a product of the member out-of-state travel memo that was released March the 1st of this year. Prior to my service to you as pro tem, a study committee trip to Europe was conducted where Senate members used Senate administrative funds for travel expenses associated with a study committee. Upon being elected pro tem, and thank you for that, I became aware of this trip through multiple media inquiries to our office regarding the purpose of the study committee, the cost of the trip, and how the trip was funded. In cooperation with the Secretary of the Senate and the Lieutenant Governor and his good staff, a thorough overview of the Senate rules associated with out-of-state travel prompted me to introduce this resolution to clarify and strengthen the Senate's policy on out-of-state travel for members and staff at the expense of the Senate or for the use of Senate funds. This resolution really does three things. First of all, it amends Senate Rule 1-2.4, and it in essence states that neither the President of the Senate nor members, those of us in the Senate, shall engage in any travel outside the United States at the expense of the Senate. Additionally, as part of that same change in Rule 1-2.4, it also provides that no member of the Senate shall engage in travel outside of Georgia, but within the United States at the expense of Senate funds, unless such travel has been approved in writing by the Committee on Administrative Affairs. Secondly, a different rule, well, same rule number, but a different approach. Rule 1-2.4 also provides that neither the President of the Senate nor any other members of the Senate who are in their final 6 months of term of office may travel outside the state of Georgia at the expense of this Senate. And third and finally, Rule 1-3.2 provides that no Senate staff member shall engage in any travel outside the United States at the expense of the Senate. And it also has the corollary with regard to our staff members and provides that no member of the Senate shall engage in any travel outside of Georgia, but within the states at the expense of the Senate, again, unless that travel is approved in writing by the Committee on Administrative Affairs. It is imperative that tax dollars be used to further the work of this body as we work for the taxpayers. These Senate funds allow us to better the lives of Georgians, produce good legislation, and operate efficiently. As long as I'm privileged to serve in this position, I will work to ensure that taxpayer dollars are used effectively in this chamber and that all funds for travel are tied to a specific legislative purpose. Now, let me be clear. I do not want, and it is not the intent of the President of this Senate nor the rules that we operate under, to dissuade our members and staff from being and going and learning from our colleagues across the state lines, or for that matter, across the pond. As Georgia's success as the #1 state in which to do business is deeply tied to the international economy. But the funds that we use for legislative operations belong to the people of Georgia, and they are counting on us to make a difference during our service to this state in their lives. Colleagues, I appreciate the bipartisan input and support that I have received in crafting this resolution, and it is my hope that we can all take pride in what we're doing here today. I want to further emphasize my appreciation to the President of the Senate and his staff for the great work that he did in cooperating with the Pro Tem's office in crafting this rule change and in fashioning the policy that we need to operate under going forward, and making sure that we've got guardrails that the members ensure that we operate within those guardrails as we travel forward in our service to the great people of Georgia. I hope that these new Senate rules provide clarity to help the Senate reach a new standard of service for the people that we represent back home that we call our beloved constituents. With that, Mr. President, I'm happy to answer questions, or I'll be happy to yield the well.
You have no questions, Senator.
Thank you. I urge your support, and I appreciate all the good work that so many of you have had in the conversations with me in my office on how we need to do this with regard to these particular rule changes. Thank you.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Chair hears none. Is there objection to the previous question being ordered? Chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of committee which is favorable to the adoption of the resolution? Chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. The question is on the adoption of the resolution. All those in favor vote yea. All those opposed nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the adoption of resolutions, the yeas are 54, the nays are 0. The resolution having received the requisite constitutional majority is therefore adopted. I want to thank the Pro Tem's office. I want to thank the Minority Leader's office. Everybody worked really hard on getting the language perfected there, and hopefully we'll avoid any of those mishaps in the future. But thank you very much, Pro Tem. Thank you very much, Minority Leader, and your staff deserves a lot of credit. So thank y'all very much. Moving on to the rules calendar. Stand by. Recognize the senator from the 19th for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask the Senate for unanimous consent to suspend Rule 2-1.7A to allow the Committee on Appropriations to meet today at 5 p.m.
The senator has moved that we suspend the rules so that their Appropriations Committee can meet today at 5 p.m. We are under a time crunch here, and quite frankly need to suspend the rules in order for us to be able to get the budget done in time. So is there objection? Without objection, motion is granted, Senator. There will be, the Appropriations Committee meeting will be at 5 o'clock today here at the Capitol in its usual place. Thank you, Senator. I recognize the senator from the 13th for a motion.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate agree to the House substitute of Senate Bill 140.
Senator has moved that the Senate agree to the House substitute on Senate Bill 140. Secretary, read the caption.
Senate Bill 140 by Senator Summers of the 13th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 7 of Title 31 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated, relating to regulation of hospitals and related institutions so as to prohibit certain surgical procedures for the treatment of gender dysphoria in minors from being performed in hospitals and other licensed healthcare facilities, to provide for exceptions, to provide for violations, to amend Article 1 of Chapter 34 of Title 43 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated, relating to the Georgia Composite Medical Board so as to prohibit certain surgical procedures for the treatment of gender dysphoria in minors. The House offers the following substitute to Senate Bill 140, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 7 of Title 31 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated, relating to regulation of hospitals and related institutions so as to prohibit certain surgical procedures for the treatment of gender dysphoria in minors. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Senator from 13th has moved that the Senate agree to the substitute on Senate Bill 140. Is there objection? There is objection from the Senator from the 41st. I recognize the Senator from the 13th to speak to the bill, and then the Senator from the 41st, you'll have an opportunity to speak after the Senator from the 13th. Senator?
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, today, once again, we're back in the well here discussing Senate Bill 140. I'm sure you all have read Senate Bill 140 from cover to cover at least a dozen times. I know I have. I want you to understand where I come from with Senate Bill 140, and I want to tell you how, honestly, how compassionate I feel that we are truly protecting the lives of children by not offering the life-altering drugs and, of course, the surgeries that are completely irreversible. I ask for your favorable consent on Senate Bill 140, and I look forward to looking people straight in the eye and tell them that I am compassionate to their plea and I understand their passion, but we're doing the right thing by being and protecting children. And that's Senate Bill 140, Mr. President, and I yield a well.
I recognize the Senator from the 41st.
Thank you, Mr. President. I respectfully ask that you all would vote no on this agree. The House came back and made it so that doctors would now be held criminally and civilly liable for simply doing their jobs, for following the medical advice that has been peer-reviewed and that is used, the standards that are used across this nation. And so not only are doctors now being put at jeopardy, but also our children still stand at risk. I understand the compassion that Senator from the 13th has for our youth. We obviously disagree. Our children are at risk when they're not given access to the hormone therapy that they need in order to properly manage their gender dysphoria. And so again, I urge you all, as an act of compassion, to vote no. Thank you. I don't know, is this debatable? Can I take questions? Can I take questions? I will yield for questions.
Senator from the 36th, would you like to ask a question?
Thank you, Mr. President. To the Senator, do you yield?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Are you able to point out what change the House made in the bill? so that we may fully understand what the new SB 140 as amended by the House contains?
Yes, thank you for that question. So the line removed the original bill that the senator from the 13th brought to us provided immunity to doctors and medical personnel who continue to provide care to these children who need it. And the House stripped that immunity, which now therefore opens medical personnel to lawsuits, not just civilly, but also criminal liability if they were to prescribe hormone treatments for these youth or to assist in any type of surgeries.
Thank you for that. Further question.
Yes.
The language in the bill also calls for the department to establish sanctions for violations of the code section up to and including the revocation of an institution's permit. That, I believe, applies to hospitals. Am I correct?
That is correct.
So this bill, isn't it true, contains a very heavy hammering rod against the medical profession and against institutions that offer health care to our Georgia patients.
The senator knows of what she speaks. That is correct. This is a very heavy hand that comes against the medical industry for simply doing their job, for living into their oath of caring for those who are in need of care.
And further question, if you'll yield.
I will yield.
The list of organizations and groups that are child-serving organizations is long, including the Academy of Pediatricians, other members of the medical community and medical organizations. Is it not true that have come before the committee in the process of this bill being considered in both chambers and pleaded for us to not take this draconian step and send the message of marginalization and negativity to parents and their children who are addressing this trans issue? Isn't that correct?
That is correct. The members of the committee were provided with a letter from 500 doctors representing pediatricians and those who are endocrinologists in this state to express their strong desire that we not pass this legislation. In addition to that, there have been hundreds of parents and advocates and youth who have come and asked and spoken out on behalf of themselves and on behalf of others, asking that parents have the right to make this choice, this medical decision for their children. In the same way that we talk about parents' rights for education, these parents have asked quite strongly and firmly that they be allowed to have the right to make medical decisions on behalf of their youth.
Thank you.
I will further yield for questions if there are any.
There are a few questions here, Senator. Senator from the 14th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Yield.
Yes.
Senator, is it not true that when this legislation gets litigated in court, that the argument that the people challenging it are likely to be successful in making is that for decades in this country, courts have recognized the right for families and parents to make the right decisions for their own kids, irrespective of what politicians want, because of the fundamental constitutional rights that they have to their own family's privacy? Is that not true?
Senator, that is correct. There are several instances already in which these bills have already been challenged, and we do know that ultimately this will be rendered unconstitutional.
And last question, Senator, if you would yield.
I will yield.
Thank you, Senator. Is it also not further true that, and not speaking of the folks in this room and their intentions, but some of the groups that push this type of legislation, is it not true that they more or less specialize in finding divisive cultural issues that fortify one party's base, and that as this body moves through more and more of those issues in an attempt to satiate those groups, that they will have to look for more and more cultural issues to depend upon to shore up their political base? Is that not true?
The senator knows of what he speaks and raises an important point. One of the things that I think is most grossly disgusting about this situation is that we are using children as pawns. We are using children to really push push forward work that it's under the guise of compassion, and I do believe the sincerity of some of the members in this room, but broadly speaking, this really is about us bullying children in order to score political points, and that to me is extraordinarily disheartening. I understand that people fundamentally want to protect children, but when the overwhelming medical professionals have come in and said this does not help children, this harms children, this increases their likelihood of committing suicide, and yet you continue to push forward, I'm clear it's no longer about children anymore. It's about something different than that.
Thank you, Senator.
Recognize Senator from the 53rd for a question.
Will the senator yield?
Yes, to my good friend from the 53rd.
Is it not true that Senate Bill 140 actually protects trans kids from genital mutilation?
Senator, it does not protect children who are experiencing gender dysphoria from receiving the care that they need. Children who are experiencing gender dysphoria need particular care that a medical professional can provide. I think it's also really important that we state that in the state of Georgia, children are not receiving these types of surgeries. And our largest contention, our largest issue with this bill is withholding drugs, withholding hormone therapy from youth who need this. We've been very clear that providing puberty blockers, access to puberty blockers, without additional access to hormone replacement therapy is actually harmful for children. And so you're in effect actually not even providing them with puberty blockers because they can only be on them for a limited period of time. This conversation for me is fundamentally, it is not about stopping surgery. Surgeries are not happening in this state. This is about making sure that children have access to hormone therapy, the hormone therapy that they need. Hormone therapy that many adults sitting in this room right now are receiving because we've aged into a certain part of our lifetime where we need additional hormones, right? These are hormones that people in this room are using. We are asking for access to hormones for these youth because they need it, because they are experiencing gender dysphoria, because they look in the mirror and they see reflected back to them an image that is not true to who they are. They see reflected back to an image that calls on them to ask for help, to ask for their parents, to ask for doctors and physicians to give them interventions in order for them to feel safe and good in their own bodies. This conversation is not about genital mutilation. It is about access to hormones. And our children deserve to have access to the medical care that they need in the same way that we give medical care for other issues that people are experiencing. That's what this conversation is about, and I think it's important that we be clear about this. We are not fighting about genital mutilation. We are fighting about medication, and we are fighting to make sure that children don't go on a black market and receive dirty and tainted hormones, because we will not allow them to receive good and safe hormones in this state in the same way that I can go and get good and safe hormones if I need them. Children need access to that as well.
Senator from 26. Senator from 26 has waived. Senator from 28, you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator, do you yield?
Yes, to the Rules Chairman.
Thank you. You keep mentioning that the doctors, one of the changes in the bills was doctors are now going to be held criminally responsible. Can you point to that in the bill? Because I'm not seeing it.
Right. So if you remember that, if you refer to the bill that we passed out of this body, it explicitly says that doctors will not be held civilly or criminally liable. So what the House did was that they stripped that language out, so it's now silent. So by not providing immunity to our doctors, what we in effect do is open them up to these types of charges.
Do you further yield?
Absolutely.
So the bill does not say that they're criminally liable?
The bill opens up the possibility for someone to be charged because it does not extend immunity.
But the bill does not say they're criminally liable? Is that yes or no?
That is correct. The bill does not say those words.
Senator from the 26, you hit your button again. Are you still in the posture of waving? Okay. All right. Senator, you have no further questions.
With that, I will yield.
Thank you, Senator. Recognize Senator from the 1st. Speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 140 is a very challenging bill. It has been something that has been heavy on the hearts for everyone in this chamber. I think we have struck a good balance here. I do take issue with the difference in hormones in adults who are in this chamber are much older than age 18 years old. I certainly think that no one in this chamber has any issues at all with hormone replacement therapy from that standpoint. But what we're doing here is we're preventing minors under 18 years old from having irreversible changes in their lives. These changes, whether it's surgical, which could be done and can be done here in the state of Georgia, or whether it's hormone replacement therapy, i.e. testosterone or estrogen, those give irreversible changes to the minor's or the child's body. That's something that as an adult, as a parent, they many times won't help with that. We've had testimony here that suggests that, and I think that it's important for us to recognize that we're certainly not denying that for any adults, but it is for minors, for irreversible changes, whether it's surgery or hormones, that's what we're preventing. As with the changes that were done in committee in public health in the House side, yes, from an immunity standpoint, that portion was removed and it is silent in there. But physicians were still held civilly liable from a malpractice standpoint. And the question is should we be held as a physician, should we be excused from criminal or civil conduct? And I certainly have angst or I have challenges related to that, but I think that in the end, I think that from a criminal or civil standpoint, we should never be above the law by any means. And I think that's a very important distinction. I'll give you an example with Michael Jackson. I think we all may remember that his cardiologist, who was taking care of him at the time as a primary care physician, allowed him to use anesthesia for sleep at night. That was not malpractice. That was criminal. And indeed, he was convicted. And indeed, he served time for that. I think he may still be serving time for that. That is what we're discussing when we're relating to that. Physicians should not be above the law, and by any means. Mr. President, I would ask for your favorable consideration relating to this bill. I think it does protect minors from irreversible changes when it comes to hormones and when it comes to surgery. And I think it's the right thing to do. Thank you.
The senator has yielded. Senator from the 42nd, you wish to speak to the bill?
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise today, colleagues, to state and explain my strong opposition to this piece of legislation. I voted against it the first time it was before us, and it's probably not a surprise that I will be voting against it this time. My colleagues, the senator from the 40th and senator from the 41st, spoke eloquently about this legislation the first time we heard it, and I believe the senator from the 41st did so again. For all of us who oppose this piece of legislation that seeks to control parents and doctors. One of the issues that I have is that the majority in this body is building a reputation for talking out of both sides of its mouth without any shame. On the one hand, there's a lot of talk about trusting parents to make the best decisions for their children when it comes to all sorts of things, what schools they can attend, COVID, whether or not they should wear masks, what food they eat, what camps they go to, any other, myriad other medical decisions, school curriculum, what can be taught by teachers in schools, what books may be appropriate to have in school libraries, and the list goes on and on. But here we are, usurping parents' rights on one particular issue, a very private particular issue, a very private particular medical issue. The body that has waded into all those things that I just listed is now telling parents they don't have the right to access medical care for their child. This is the definition of hypocrisy. The rule does seem to be that we are for parental rights when those parents make decisions we agree with. And when we don't like the decisions they make, then we intend to outlaw those decisions. As if taking away parents' rights weren't enough, SB 140 as amended prevents doctors from doing their job according to professional standards and threatening them with criminal action or civil liability if they do so. These are the very doctors we rely on and trust when facing our darkest moments when our health is endangered. This bill, in addition to usurping parental rights, usurps doctors' professional standards, requiring them to go against the American Academy of Pediatrics and the American Psychological Association, just to name two, or face legal and reputational consequences. Listen, maybe under many or even most circumstances, it would be advisable for a young person in consultation with their parents and their doctor to wait before considering surgery or hormonal treatment. Perhaps that might be the case, but it's undeniable that that is not true in 100% of the instances that face parents and doctors across our state. It is undeniably true that there are circumstances for the more than 11 million people here in Georgia where it actually is medically advisable to help that child be who they are and be able to continue their life here in this state in a way that engages them to interact authentically with their world. And the problem with having a blunt instrument like that is you leave no room. There is no room left for those very small instances, maybe it is only a few, where it is 100% medically advisable, and I dare say that almost every single person in this chamber, when faced with the fact pattern that we know is out there, would say yes. In this instance, in this one instance, it is better to allow the doctors and the parents to work with this child and make this decision. But you're saying no, because it's just vague. It's vague. Well, it's not a good idea. Maybe it's not most of the time, but I guarantee you that I could get up here with a fact pattern and you would say, nope, that's right. In this instance, that was the right thing to do. So shame on you for inserting yourself so directly with that one family. Hope no one ever does that to you. This bill is addressing an issue that we only barely are starting to understand, which is another reason it's inappropriate to rush down here with a blunt instrument that treats all situations the same when we know that they are not. Gender identity of youth with gender dysphoria needs a lot more thoughtful study and learning and less arrogance and hubris, right? Because otherwise, all it shows us is that all it is a cultural issue, because it's not a sincere attempt. It's not a sincere attempt to engage with any sort of actual understanding of gender dysphoria as it spans all different types of people. There is no one size fits all, y'all. There just isn't. So that does demonstrate the insincerity of this bill, because it demonstrates that really what we're talking about is cultural changes that make people uncomfortable and that they just would prefer not to see. So instead of studying the issue with an open mind to listen and learn, we're closing doors, creating far more problems that reach beyond our base of knowledge and authority. There are no solutions on offer here for any of it, for any of the problems raised. Just a sledgehammer that smashes at a few fragile youth, shatters their parents' and doctors' efforts to engage in any kind of a conversation that could support them in a thorough and authentic way, and then sweep it all under the rug. I urge you to vote against SB 40 and to recognize these parents, these children, and most importantly, our own limitations. Thank you, Mr. President. I'll take questions if there are
You have
any.
no questions, Senator.
Thank you. I yield the well.
Senators yielded the well. Senator from the 9th, you wish to speak to the bill?
Thank you, Mr. President. And I'm going to echo some things that have already been said, but I think some of these things can't be said enough. Of course, I am standing in opposition of this bill. You know, we are, at the end of the day, we are picking on kids. We're targeting a vulnerable group of children. I think it's mean. I think it's insensitive. I think if we're going to pick on somebody, let's pick on some people our own size. I have plenty of corporations we can go after. Why trans kids? Every time, why trans kids? Why? And I can't get a clear answer as to why, other than we just can't. This body just chooses to do it. Not only that, now we want to punish doctors for doing what they are trained to do, is to save lives, is to give medical care. Maybe it doesn't explicitly say criminalize, but we are talking about maybe removing their licensing, punishing them for helping and trying to do the jobs that they have studied their lifetimes to do. We continue to push the alternative narratives. This is based on political expediency. As stated by a member of our chamber on crossover day, you can't simultaneously have two different things be true. Last session, our chamber passed a bill enshrining parental rights over their children's education and development. I know, I was sitting right here when it happened. Today, we're debating the rights of parents to protect their children's mental health and their physical wellness. Our chamber has fought restrictions on freedom of medical choice throughout the pandemic. That's all we debated last year and the year before. But we continue to take away the freedom of medical professionals and citizens to make choices about their health, the health of their family, and the health of their children. Make no mistake, these decisions are closely monitored and guided by medical professionals. Guided by medical professionals. It's not like kids are getting them off the streets, but now, I don't know what'll happen if we pass this legislation. They might turn to means that are harmful. But right now, it's under the guidance of medical professionals. And these aren't decisions that are reached offhand. They're not handing out, and advising just offhandedly. These people are medical professionals. They've studied. They know what they're doing, and we should leave it in their hands to do it. And finally, did we not prioritize mental health care last session? Bipartisan. And there is no doubt around the data that shows that even having this debate is damaging to children, youth, and even adults with gender dysphoria. Again, we're picking on a vulnerable group of people for political scoring points. The people that we're picking on they have turned to self-harm before and suicides, and it is directly associated with restrictive laws just like this. And our chamber's voting history shows that our values do not align with this bill. I mean, I'm getting whiplash. Which one do you guys want, parental rights or not? To quote the senator from the 27th on March 6, 2023, I know all of us love our kids, and I know that if we were asked, all of you, if you were able to make the best decision for your child, every one of you would say yes. So let's trust the rest of Georgia parents to do the same. And let's decide in this body, let's stay consistent, at least, in this body. If it's parental rights, let's make sure we're upholding parental rights, if that's what y'all believe. And with that, Mr. President, I will take questions.
You have no questions, Senator.
I yield the will.
Senators yield as well. I recognize the senator from the 6th.
Mr. President, I rise to speak against the motion and to plead with my colleagues in this chamber that we focus our time on critical issues that are impacting hardworking Georgians across the state. I want to start by sending my love and appreciation to all of the individuals who have ensured that their voices would be heard throughout this debate, and send my love and appreciation to those individuals who are directly impacted by this bill. To the transgendered youth and to their families, I am sorry. I am sorry that this body has failed you. Because if this body really wanted to do something to help transgender individuals and their families, we'd be providing mental health resources. We'd be providing more resources to help these individuals. Instead, what this bill does is take away critical resources at a critical time for these people. What this bill also does is that it takes away critical focus and critical time that this body has to address issues that are important and that are impacting everyday, hardworking Georgians each and every day. Education, healthcare, housing, jobs. Imagine if we had spent the energy that has been spent on this bill on the 500,000 Georgians that don't have insurance. Imagine if we had spent the time and energy and the hours of backroom dealing and whipping that was spent on this bill on addressing the needs that we have in our rural communities and the investments that all of our communities need across the state. And I've heard that there's some sort of moral and religious imperative to help these children. But if we had that imperative and took it seriously, then there are over 400,000 children in Georgia living in poverty that need our attention. There are over 8,000 children in foster care that need our attention today. There are 60% of children in this state that are not reading on grade level by the 3rd grade that need our attention today. But instead, we spent hours in caucus positions dealing with a bill that does nothing more than put lives of transgender children at risk. I want to close by acknowledging the parents and families of these children, because throughout this debate, I didn't hear a lot of faith in parents. I didn't hear a lot of trust in the ability of parents to work with doctors to figure out what is best for their kids, to figure out how to best meet their needs. And to echo what my colleague from the 9th mentioned, I know that we all love our kids. And I know that if I asked any of you, do you think that you would be the one to make the best decision for your child? Every single one of you would say yes. So I'm asking you to trust Georgia parents to do the same and vote no, vote nay on this motion. Mr. President, I yield the will.
You do have a couple questions, Senator, but you yield the will. Yield the will. Senators yielded. Senator from the 7th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise today in opposition to Senate Bill 140. Rather than working to address our affordable housing crisis or fighting for working families, this bill seeks to deny our transgender youth some of their most essential health care needs. SB 140 would make it harder for parents to care for their children and make it hard for doctors to care for their patients' physical and emotional needs. In a national survey, 1 in 5 trans youth said that they attempted suicide, but gender-affirming services could cut that risk in half. Gender-affirming care is life-saving care. Protecting children means protecting all of our children. So I stand with the people of Georgia, urging that this chamber does not pass this bill. We must protect marginalized groups, not embolden discrimination against our LGBTQ community. Some of the members across the aisle want us to trust parents to dictate the books and lessons in our schools, and yet they refuse to trust parents to make medical decisions. But it's not just our youth that this bill would hurt. Georgia has one of the highest maternal mortality rates, and Georgia continues to fail our rural communities with our inability to recruit doctors. And yet this bill would hold administratively liable the very doctors we need the most, even possibly causing them to lose their license. This bill is wrong, and I urge my colleagues to live to Georgia's motto of values of wisdom, justice, and moderation, and vote against this bill. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Senator has yielded the well. Senator from the 36, who wish to rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I've shared with you the other morning from the well and points of personal privilege that one of my early texts that I received by phone that morning, was from my pastor, urging me to be a voice for the families across Georgia and across the nation that are moved to address supporting their child who's transitioning. The second text that stood out that morning, not much further than when my pastor's text arrived, is from a family, dear friends, longtime neighbors, live 2 blocks away, are wonderful backbone people in our community, and the proud parents of 2 children. And my neighbor said, please stand tall on this issue. Please do anything you can to keep Senate Bill 140 from becoming the law of the land. And she described how one of her 2 children, her older child, has transitioned and is female, and what a difference it made for them to be able to make their own decisions about their child's situation, to be fully supported. I want to stop and salute the families who say yes and affirm their children's self-knowledge when they come to their parent and say, this is true for me. I want to affirm those families that stand tall. And I want to ask you, in this chamber, we have heard from early on, last year and again this year, the very compelling story of one of our colleagues from DeKalb County, the senator from the 40th, who movingly shared her own story, the own personal story of the journey of her family as they moved into this space that they never knew of what they were going to encounter. And she has asked us to listen to the honest findings, the pathway that she and her child and her husband and her family have been on. And she has given us a compelling story. And I ask you, Can that not move you from the abstract discussion of whether you want to pile on with this bill that the GOP is pushing in states across the country? Or do you want to listen to a dear colleague who contributes mightily, who works hard every day, who comes down here and brings her total honest self and stands up for those who need an advocate under the Gold Dome? And that colleague has asked you to listen to her story as a parent. Are you really comfortable just closing the door on that? Somehow discrediting that honest and compelling story that she shared now for 2 years? It's very personal. That makes it very personal here. And thankfully, we've come to the point in the legislature, it wasn't this way when I got here, but we've come to the point down here where members of different communities are getting elected and bringing their voices that were formerly never seen here. People of Muslim faith, people of immigrant backgrounds, LGBTQ community members, and parents of trans children. Their voices are here with us, not somewhere else, not across the street, not just in an article that you read or something on TV. These are our colleagues sharing their family stories, sharing their life experience. And I urge you, open your hearts and listen. How can you deny that fundamental truth that we've heard coming from this well, from our own colleague from the 40th District, elected and reelected by her constituents, loved and admired and cherished for the work that she does down here on behalf of those in need? Can you hear that voice? Can you understand? This is a real person, a real family, someone we know and respect right here in our midst. And the same occurred on the House side, I would say, as well, when people shared their stories. I was so struck by the contradiction that on one day, Suicide Prevention Day occurred down here at the Capitol. I had constituents come down who've lost their own children to suicide and who have stepped into that space of being a voice and an advocate for us doing everything we can to prevent suicide. The next day, the House did what they did on SB 140. When we know, and the data is clear and the statistics are there, that trans youth who experience marginalization and being pushed to the side, being bullied, being taunted, being made to feel less than, are very statistically susceptible to suicide attempts. So the stakes are high here, folks. This isn't just about another bill that we're going to take a look at and then we're going to cast our vote. The stakes are high. You are impacting real families, real people, real children. You're also impacting negatively the healthcare community that provides services, needed services for transgendered youth. So I ask you, are you comfortable with that? Is you still going to vote your caucus position? Think twice. This is a vote you're going to live with the rest of your life. And when you go back to your district, it won't be long, maybe a little bit, maybe a few weeks, maybe next year, maybe in Sunday school, maybe standing outside under the oak tree after church. But you are going to hear from families in your district who are going to share their pain with you that this was your decision that you made, this was how you chose to vote. When the data is clear, and when, as our colleague from the 42nd pointed out, there is much more to unfold on this pathway of fully learning and understanding this dynamic in our population. I urge you to reconsider supporting this bill. You may have voted in your caucus to support it. It's the wrong thing to do. You're damaging real children, damaging real families, insulting the medical community, in my opinion, and paving the way for children who are denied access to medically necessary hormonal treatment. You're paving the way for incidents of suicide among our youth. All of this is a very heavy decision that you're making as you cast this vote. And I would plead with you to think about it differently possibly than you have thus far. And again, we have colleagues in our midst who can share reality with you if you're not in touch with it. Thank you, Mr. President, and if there are no questions, I'll yield the well.
You do have a question, Senator. Senator from the 40th.
Yes, of course. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mr. President. To the Senator, isn't it true that even if you're a senator sitting in this body and you really do sincerely feel that you are helping and not harming children, that you still might want to consider that you're about to pass a law that is unconstitutional?
I think you make an excellent point, Senator from the 40th. And at bedrock, that will take us into court battles that have in other states prevailed in ruling that this fails to meet constitutional rights.
Exactly. And is it not true that that will use precious tax dollars, and that the arguments would be such that some of these surgeries are surgeries that non-transgender children also seek, and that you are singling out a particular set of people and saying that they cannot have access to surgeries that some other minors do have access to, which could be challenged under the 14th Amendment?
I believe the Senator makes a very compelling point. And it just escapes me how we think we can practice medicine. We weren't elected to practice medicine, good people. We have some of the finest medical schools in the country right here in our state, and incredible doctors, and a healthcare infrastructure that we need to get behind and push forward and fund. And this is not the approach that does that, putting politicians in the doctor's office with a parent and their child.
Do you further yield?
I do yield.
Is it your understanding that there could be unintended consequences to this bill, in that we are not medical professionals, but we are putting children in a situation where they could end up having to be on puberty blockers longer than they should be, because they cannot make the transition to hormone replacement therapy, and that perhaps we should take a deeper look at this in order to prevent very real unintended consequences? That's a question.
Yes, I'm in complete agreement with the Senator from the 40th, and that is exactly an underlying point in this whole bill debate is the damage that it does. The damage that it does, and it affects real people.
And one more question?
Yes, I yield.
Is it not true that I heard very recently that out by the ropes, that even Georgia's Attorney General has said that this law is unconstitutional?
That's very important to know, and I'm pleased that you shared that. That's not something that I was aware of, but it speaks volumes, does it not?
Yes, it does. Thank you. I have no more questions.
Thank you. If there are no more questions, I'll yield the well.
You did have a question, Senator, but if you yielded, you have that right too.
I'll take a question.
Senator from the 53rd, recognize for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the senator yield?
I yield to the Senator from the 53rd.
Senator, the people of the Northwest are getting quite upset with some of the things you're saying. Can you clarify for me, do you believe that genital mutilation is a necessary surgery for youth and minors?
I think that you are using a supercharged banner.
Will the gentlelady, or I'm sorry, will the gentle senator yield again?
I believe that you're using a supercharged term that has been politicized, and you're using it deliberately to stir that up. This is not about genital mutilation. This is not about genital mutilation, not at all.
Will the senator further yield?
So maybe you can explain that, hopefully, to your constituents. Yes, I'll yield to the gentleman.
When it comes to the constitutionality of this, wasn't it your caucus that submitted legislation a couple years ago that would ban electroshock therapy or any type of surgery for those under 16? Would that have been constitutional?
Let me say to you that I don't at all recall my caucus introducing
Senate
the
Bill
bill such as you
146.
described. There may be an individual member of this body here or across the hall that introduced legislation you're referring to, but no caucus that I'm in has taken that position or filed that bill.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
You have one more question,
I
Senator.
will
Senator from
yield
the
to
55.
the Democratic leader.
Will the senator yield?
I do.
Isn't it true, Senator, that we have a law against genital mutilation?
You're absolutely correct,
And
Senator.
it isn't also true that I passed it?
The senator knows whereof she speaks. Case closed. Thank you very much. Search your hearts. Search your hearts. I attended a rally yesterday of people from my church and other faith leaders. Met and spoke with many families with trans kids. Met and spoke with trans kids who had been here and sought the ear of some of you and felt sometimes a rather chilly reception. But it was, again, another eye-opening experience. If you can open your hearts, open your eyes, look at the facts, there's a right way to vote on this bill, and that is to not move forward. Vote no on Senate Bill 140. Thank you.
The senator has yielded the well. Recognize the senator from the 42nd. You wish to speak?
I rise to make a motion, Mr. President.
Yes.
I'd like to move that we table SB 140.
The senator has moved that the Senate table Senate Bill 140. Unfortunately, Senator, that motion is not debatable on this. I believe you have a motion that will be acceptable right now coming from your colleague right here. Senator from the 14th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to adjourn.
The senator has moved to adjourn. Is there objection? We have an objection. All those in favor of the motion to adjourn will vote yea. All those opposed will vote no. Secretary will unlock the machine. This vote only requires a majority of the quorum, a simple majority. On the motion to adjourn, the yeas are 20 and the nays are 31, so that motion has failed. Senator, would you still like to speak? Okay. I recognize the senator from the 14th to speak. to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. I know the feeling of a quiet chamber in which the vote is baked. It is one of the most familiar feelings in the House. Some of my fellow members can agree with me on that. I know the feeling of getting up to get orange juice or a milk or a soda because you know that a long floor debate is coming, because it's not going to change the result, because either there are caucus positions or we're tired of listening to each other. I get it, because I get tired of listening to colleagues when enough time passes, or I go to the anteroom, go to the bathroom, crack a joke, grab a soda. But I think today it is a particularly salient feeling to be on the floor with empty seats because this result is already baked. And the reason is it's a metaphor for silence. The silence that trans kids hear when they say, no, this issue's not going away. I do not just want to be an astronaut, which is, by the way, a comment that I heard indirectly, and I don't remember who, but there was a senator who told somebody on the ropes that when they were a kid, they wanted to be an astronaut, and compared that to this. This is not that. I mean, that's almost an offense. I mean, it is an offensive comparison. But the reason we don't know in this chamber that it's an offensive comparison is because we're not in community with those kids. I'm not just talking about Republicans. I mean Democrats too. There are a couple people in this room, and you have heard from them, who have the ability to speak to what it's like to be in community with trans children, to actually listen to them and understand that this is not a phase. This is not something that is casual or like a job that they want when they grow up. This is their life. This is who they are. To say anything else is erasure. It's to say that those people don't exist. Do you understand that those are the stakes for these kids? This isn't a color bag that they pick to bring to school. This is not something that they do to rebel against their parents. This is their entire life. And that's why they take it. That's why they kill themselves when they don't get this care. It's really that simple. We come running back in because of a motion to adjourn. We're ready to show up when it's time to keep our grip on power, but we're not ready to show up when it's time to let those messages in, when it's time to listen to the people in the hallway. Do you know that the people in the hallway lobby me like I'm a member of the majority? They act like I'm about to vote yes on this. Do you know why they act that way? Because I'm the only one who's listening to them. At least in that moment. They've got plenty of people to listen to this building, don't get me wrong, and I don't want to undersell the importance of the people who have gone to the ropes of both parties. I acknowledge both parties have gone to the ropes. There are advocates who listen to this messaging every day. But the truth is, the reason that 90 million of your colleagues just went to the well to speak to an empty room, it's not that we want our media hits. F our media hits. It's because there's a message from these children that is not getting through to this space. It is being blocked, and all of us are like struggling to figure out how to get that message into this room. And we're not very good at it because there's big doors right there. And because we aren't trans in this room, I don't think we have a trans member. So there's this barrier, and we're doing everything we can to get the right messaging to the people who make the decisions, but we're failing, and today we failed. And the Republican caucus will lock down, and it will vote yes, and this bill will pass, and the governor will sign it, and it will be litigated. And we will go back to our corners and keep doing the same crap we always do when there is a divisive partisan culture war issue at issue. And in the meantime, kids will die. Kids will commit suicide. Kids will feel that they're not being heard, that their basic existence is being invalidated, erased. And maybe the closest metaphor that any of us could possibly get close to understand what that's like in a million years is the silence on the Senate floor when half the Senate is gone having a coffee because we already know the result. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Senator has yielded the well. Senator from the 34th. You'd like to speak, Senator?
Sorry, Mr. President. I rise in opposition of this bill, but I want to share a story with you all. A few years back, some kids had asked me if they could meet with me. And of course, I'm their senator, so of course I met with them. And it was only 5 of them, but I was down in Fayette County, and they attended Sandy Creek High School. And I said, so what can I help you with? And they said, well, we need to become a club. And the young lady who started, she said, and by the way, I'm Bi. And I said, it's a pleasure to meet you, Bi. Turns out that wasn't her name. The kids educated me on that day. They were trying to start a club like the other clubs at their school for the gingerbread. Anybody know anything about the gingerbread? Okay, let me share what I learned. I told them I was not aware of all of what they were talking about. Even as an adult, I just was unaware, and I'm not ashamed to say I don't know everything. But they drew me a gingerbread to tell me the different types. And I had never seen it, and nobody had ever talked to me about it, so clueless, but it was an interesting conversation. But after listening to them, I merely did what most of you would do, and that was to reach out to the school and find out where the barriers are, keeping this group of kids from having their own club. When I learned the rules of starting a club at the school, I got back with them and I shared with them the steps that it would take. You know, they have to have a sponsor and they have to have all these things to become a club. And I'm assuming, because this has been a few years back, that the club may still exist at Sandy Creek High School because of my intervention, because all I wanted to do was to have a level playing field. These were kids who I had identified with each other. They wanted to find a club just like all the other clubs at the school. And when they got one, they were so happy. They thought I was the bomb, they told me. You know, I listened to them and worked on their behalf so that they can have a club. Now, the Bi part, they gave me the gingerbread so I could learn. And being better aware, why are we dictating instead of listening and helping? I'll tell you why. I've been saying this for years. I've been in this chamber more than 20 years. And I know it's a joke of sort. But when I was growing up in Herndon Homes, my brother got a chance to join the boys club. And I cried because my mother said, you can't join the boys club. Even though my mother's in heaven, she'd be proud to know that I'm now a member of the boys club. Some of y'all get it, but the rest of y'all, tomorrow you may understand. Thank you. But at any rate, I am here to say that we consistently are attacking things that are none of your business. These are our children. If we make a bad decision, look in your own self and see how many bad decisions you've made. But by and large, we can live with it because it's ours to make. But I'm going to leave on this note. I hope your districts are looking at all of this stuff you all are just pushing through because you have the numbers. And I hope they're lining up to replace you, because I'm going to give mine up, so it's all good. But you all have got to start representing all of Georgia, particularly your district, and my question in leaving, have you even spoken to your district to get a consensus on what it is that we're all in this together? Period. We are all elected, and we are all human, and we are all adults. So I urge my colleagues to stop trying to legislate everything because you got the numbers. Because hopefully, in the future, when I'm gone, we'll turn it back over like former Lieutenant Governor Casey Cagle was talking about Dems being in control and had the power. When we get it back, it's going to be another new day, but we're not going to be as mean-spirited as you all are. I'll yield the well.
Senators, yield to the well. Recognize the majority leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the previous question.
Senators move that the previous question be called. Is there objection to the previous question being called? Got objection right here. All those in favor of the previous question being called will vote yea. All those opposed, nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the motion, the yeas are 31 and the nays are 20, and this motion has passed. On the question of the previous question being ordered, I recognize the senator from the 42nd. For what purpose do you rise?
To make a motion? I'd like to move that we table SB 140.
The senator has.
No, it's not. It's not.
The senator has moved that we table the bill. Is there objection to that motion? Objection to the motion. All those in favor of the senator from the 42nd's motion to table will vote yea. All those opposed will vote nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the motion to table, the yeas are 21 and the nays are 30, and this motion has failed. The previous question has been ordered. Senator for the 41st, what purpose do you rise?
Yes, Mr. President. Per Rule 7-1.8, I have submitted an amendment and would like for that to be considered.
Yeah, the amendment is considered out of order because of the motion that was made by the senator from the 13th, because he agreed to the House version as amended. So your amendment would be considered out of order, and we've had the previous question already called. Now, at the point in time, the debate is closed on this. It is now a matter of voting on the underlying bill itself as amended. is on the Senate has agreed, on Senate Bill 140, the Senate has agreed to the House's substitute on Senate Bill 140. We have debated that. All those in favor of the Senator from the 13th motion will vote yea. All those opposed, nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the motion to agree or insist on the agree to the House's position, yeas are 31, the nays are 21, so the motion has prevailed. Okay, we're going to break before we head on down to the rules calendar. We're going to break for lunch. Let's break for lunch. I know some people have House committee meetings they got to attend at 1 o'clock, so we're going to break for lunch, and we will reconvene at 2:15. 2:15 we'll reconvene and take up the rest of the rules calendar. Stand at ease.